The signal arrived on a Tuesday. Dr. Eliza Chen was running calibration tests on the new quantum array at Arecibo when the patterns first appeared. Unlike the usual cosmic background noise, these pulses came in precise, mathematical sequences that couldn't be natural. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her glasses and stared at the monitor. "Jenkins, are you seeing this?" She called over her shoulder, voice barely above a whisper. The aging astrophysicist shuffled to her station, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. "My God," he breathed. "It's structured. Deliberate." Within hours, every major observatory on Earth confirmed the signal. Within days, the preliminary decryption suggested it contained mathematical constants and simple element diagrams, universal language. Within weeks, as Chen led the international decryption team, the full message became clear, and with it came dread. "It's not a greeting," Chen explained to the emergency UN Security Council. The dark circles under her eyes told of sleepless nights spent confirming what she desperately hoped was a translation error. "It's a notice of judgment and intent." The holographic projection behind her displayed the decoded message. The species designated Earth-dominant bipedal omnivores manifests prohibited neural architecture patterns. Classification: Aberrant Evolution Type 7. Recommendation: Quarantine and resolution. Consensus achieved. Notice provided as courtesy under Consortium Protocol 5.39. "They've been watching us," Chen continued, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "The message originates from what they call the Consortium, 7 advanced civilizations that apparently govern this sector of the galaxy. They've determined that human brains, specifically our capacity for both logical and lateral thinking, our creativity, represent what they consider a dangerous evolutionary path." The room erupted in questions until the Secretary General raised her hand for silence. "What exactly does quarantine and resolution mean, Doctor?" Chen met her gaze evenly. "Based on contextual analysis, we believe it means containment followed by extinction." Humanity responded as humanity always had, with defiance, diplomacy, and desperate preparation. A response message was crafted by Earth's greatest minds, explaining human philosophy, art, and aspirations for peaceful coexistence. Militaries worldwide mobilized while civilians were kept in carefully managed ignorance to prevent panic. The Consortium's answer came 3 months later, not as a transmission, but as a fleet. They emerged from what appeared to be artificially generated spatial distortions just beyond lunar orbit. 17 vessels of impossible configurations, their hulls shifting like liquid metal yet harder than any material known to science. Earth's hastily assembled defensive satellites fired their experimental weaponry. The Consortium ships absorbed the attacks without acknowledgement, like an elephant ignoring mosquitoes. The first strike targeted military installations with surgical precision. The second disabled global communications networks. By the third day, when the orbital defense platforms and space stations were systematically eliminated, the truth could no longer be hidden from the public. Chen watched from the underground Ninorati bunker as footage showed Paris, Beijing, and Cairo shimmering under strange energy fields that neutralized all electronic activity within. Millions weren't killed. They were simply rendered technologically helpless, forced to witness the casual demonstration of power. "They could destroy us completely," General Rivera stated flatly beside her. "But they're showing restraint. Why?" Chen studied the patterns of attack, her mind already racing ahead. "They're methodical, efficient. They don't want to damage Earth itself, just remove us from it." She turned to him, a dangerous spark of inspiration in her eyes. "And that tells me they have rules. Limitations, maybe even weaknesses." As night fell across a stunned and reeling America, Chen made a decision. If human unpredictability was what the Consortium feared, then perhaps it would also be humanity's salvation. 5 years passed beneath the surface of a world no longer fully their own. Dr. Eliza Chen's footsteps echoed through the curved tunnels of Geneva Deep, one of humanity's largest underground complexes. The lighting mimicked natural sunlight cycles, but everyone knew the difference. Real sunlight didn't flicker during consortium scanning sweeps. Power conservation protocols in effect for sectors 7 through 12 announced the overhead speakers in multiple languages. All non-essential activities suspended until 600. Chen hardly noticed such announcements anymore. Her mind was occupied with the latest neural mapping results from her lab. She clutched her tablet tightly as she entered the central command hub, where representatives from surviving governments maintained humanity's resistance. Commander Jackson Wei looked up from the holographic display of surface conditions. At 38, his face already carried the weathered look of someone much older. A jagged scar ran from his right temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a consortium drone encounter that had killed 3 of his team. "Tell me you have something, Doctor," he said as she approached. Chen nodded cautiously. "Maybe. The quantum resonance patterns we've been tracking in human brain activity, they're not random. There's a correlation between creative thought and localized quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible according to conventional physics." Wei glanced around the hub, then led her to a more private alcove. "Explain it like I'm a soldier, not a physicist." "Our minds are affecting reality at the quantum level," Chen said simply. "The consortium species evolved along strictly logical pathways. Their neural architecture is efficient but inflexible. Ours is different. When humans imagine something impossible, our brains actually create tiny localized disruptions in quantum probability fields. And this helps us how?" Wei asked, the tiredness in his voice betraying years of diminishing hope. "Their technology operates on predictable quantum principles. If we could amplify the human mind's natural ability to disrupt those principles." The facility shuddered as a distant boom interrupted her. Alarm lights bathed the corridor in red. "Surface strike," Wei explained, already moving toward the command center. "They've been increasing lately. Whatever you're working on, work faster." That night, in her small private quarters, Chen reviewed her daughter Maya's latest drawings. At 10 years old, Maya had never known a life above ground. Yet her artwork depicted open skies and forests with uncanny accuracy, places she'd never seen. Chen pinned the newest drawing to her wall alongside dozens of others. Something about the spiral patterns in this one caught her attention. They resembled the quantum fluctuation data from her lab, but with subtle variations that can't be right," she whispered. She grabbed her tablet and compared the child's drawing with her research data. The correlation was beyond coincidence. Maya had intuitively drawn patterns that precisely predicted quantum field behaviors Chen's team had spent months calculating. 3 levels below, in the heart of the Geneva facility, Project Prometheus waited. The experimental device, a ring of specialized quantum computers linked to a neural interface, had shown promise, but the test subjects couldn't maintain stable fields. The human mind alone wasn't strong enough to manipulate quantum reality consistently. But perhaps that had been the wrong approach entirely. The next morning, Wei found Chen outside the Prometheus chamber, eyes bright with renewed purpose despite her exhaustion. "I've been thinking about this all wrong," she said without preamble. "We've been trying to find someone with an exceptional mind to power the device. But what if it's not about exceptional individuals? What if it's about our collective consciousness, our shared capacity for imagination?" Wei studied her face, allowing himself a small ember of hope. "You're talking about linking multiple minds to your machine." "More than that," Chen replied. "I'm talking about tapping into what makes us human, our ability to collectively dream of impossible things until they become possible. The very quality the consortium fears most about us." Above them, through kilometers of rock and metal shielding, consortium ships patrolled skies they now considered their own. They had claimed Earth's surface, but had yet to understand the spark that truly defined humanity, a spark that was about to become a flame. "It shouldn't work," Dr. Eliza Chen muttered to herself as she studied the holographic model rotating above her workstation. "But it does." The lab hummed with the quiet intensity of 24 scientists working around the clock. 3 months had passed since Chen's epiphany about her daughter's drawings, and Project Prometheus had been completely redesigned. Maya sat cross-legged on a cushioned observation platform, drawing spirals and interconnected patterns while neural sensors discreetly monitored her brainwaves. At 10 years old, she remained unaware of her crucial role in humanity's resistance. To her, the colorful drawings were simply a way to pass time while her mother worked. "The amplitude is increasing again," reported Dr. Sato, one of Chen's top researchers. "Every time she creates a new pattern, we're seeing quantum fluctuations that match her neural activity exactly." Chen nodded. "It's like she's intuiting quantum states before they exist." "Which is theoretically impossible," Sato added. Chen smiled thinly. "Exactly. And that's why the consortium hasn't developed countermeasures. Their evolution prioritized certainty and predictability. The concept of creating something fundamentally new, something that can't be predicted from existing conditions, is literally unthinkable to them." The door slid open as Commander Y entered, accompanied by 3 intelligence officers. His expression was grim. "We intercepted a consortium transmission," he said without preamble. "They've detected unusual quantum signatures from this region. They suspect a human weapons facility, but haven't pinpointed our location yet. We have maybe 3 days before they narrow it down." Chen felt her chest tighten. "We need more time. The prototype isn't ready." "Make it ready," White replied simply. After Wei departed, Chen called an emergency meeting of her core team. 12 exhausted scientists gathered around the conference table, the weight of humanity's future heavy on their shoulders. "The neural quantum entanglement theory is sound," Chen began, calling up data visualizations. "Human consciousness, specifically our capacity for genuine creativity, creates microscopic disruptions in quantum probability fields. What Maya and other children do intuitively, we believe we can amplify and direct through the Prometheus device." Dr. Khatri, their senior neurologist, leaned forward. "But the neural feedback problem remains unsolved. The human brain wasn't meant to directly perceive quantum states. Every test subject experiences seizures within minutes." "Then we keep the exposure brief," Chen said firmly. "We need a working prototype, even if it's only operational for a short duration." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of frantic work. Sleep was abandoned. Meals were forgotten. The Prometheus device, a helmet-like apparatus connected to a room-sized quantum computer array, took its final form. When the first test came, a volunteer named Marcus Torres sat nervously as technicians fitted the device to his head. He was a former physics teacher who had lost his family during the initial invasion. "Remember," Chen instructed him, "don't try to control the quantum field. Simply hold the image in your mind, the pattern we showed you." Torres nodded, his hands trembling slightly. "For Earth," he whispered as the device activated. The monitoring screens erupted with activity. Torres gasped, his back arching as his eyes widened. "It's beautiful," he managed. "I can see possibilities." For 78 seconds, Torres maintained a stable quantum field that defied everything the consortium believed possible. Objects within the field experienced altered probability states. Pencils stood on their points, water formed impossible shapes. Light bent around obstacles. Then Torres screamed. Blood trickled from his nose and ears as his neural readings spiked chaotically. By the time they removed the device, he had slipped into a coma from which he would never awaken. Chen stood motionless by his bedside in the medical bay, her face a mask of guilt and determination. "His sacrifice wasn't in vain," Wei said quietly, joining her. "The readings confirmed your theory. But the neural interface is still too crude," Chen replied. "It needs something more elegant." Later that night, studying Maya's newest drawing, a complex spiral with human figures holding hands around its perimeter, Chen suddenly understood what was missing. "It's not about one mind imposing its will on quantum reality," she whispered to herself. "It's about harmony, resonance, multiple minds thinking in concert." The facility's alarms chose that moment to shatter the silence. The consortium had found them. The evacuation alarms wailed through Geneva Deep as personnel rushed through predetermined escape protocols. Children and non-essential staff were already boarding the maglev transports that would carry them through the emergency tunnels to auxiliary facilities scattered throughout the Alps. Commander Wei coordinated the defensive response from the command center, his voice steady despite the chaos. Consortium forces have breached the upper access points. Security teams, implement Containment Protocol Delta. We need to buy time. Dr. Chen worked frantically in the Prometheus lab, downloading critical research data, while her team dismantled key components for transport. "Mom, I'm scared," Maya whispered, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Chen knelt to her daughter's level. "I know, sweetheart. But remember what I told you. You're going on an adventure with Dr. Sato. I'll join you soon." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The facility's external sensors had detected a consortium capital ship positioning directly above them. There wouldn't be enough time to evacuate everyone. Wei appeared at the laboratory doorway, his tactical gear scorched from recent combat. "Last transport leaves in 15 minutes, he announced. "Priority personnel only. Chen, you and Maya need to be on it." Chen straightened, her decision already made. "Maya will go. I'm staying." Wei's expression hardened. "That wasn't a request, Doctor." "Neither was my response, Commander." She handed Maya's small backpack to Dr. Sato, who had appeared behind Wei. "Take care of her." After a painfully brief farewell with her daughter, Chen turned to Wei. "I need to complete one final experiment. The Prometheus device is our only chance." Wei studied her face for a long moment before nodding. "What do you need?" "Time. And access to the main quantum array." While the last evacuees departed and Wei's security teams fought a losing battle against consortium forces penetrating deeper into the facility, Chen made her preparations. The simplified Prometheus device now sat in the center of the main laboratory, connected directly to the facility's power core. The neural feedback killed Torres because a single human mind can't process quantum states at that magnitude, she explained to Wei as they worked. But if the consciousness is distributed across the quantum field itself, Wei looked up from setting the last explosive charge. "You're going to link yourself to it." "Yes. It will kill you." Chen's hands never paused in their work. "Probably. But if it works, even briefly, the quantum field should shield the evacuation tunnels from consortium sensors." The building shook as something massive impacted the surface above. "They're bringing down the heavy artillery," Wei observed grimly. "Time's up." "Almost ready," Chen replied, settling into the chair and connecting the neural interface components to her temples. "You should go, Commander." Wei checked his weapon instead. "Someone needs to hold them off until you're done. Besides, someone should witness this." The laboratory door sealed as the first sounds of consortium weapons fire echoed down the corridor. Chen activated the final sequence and closed her eyes. Pain lanced through her consciousness as the device powered up. Unlike Torres, she had modified the interface to distribute the neural load across her entire brain rather than concentrating it in the creative centers. It wouldn't prevent the damage, but it might delay it long enough. As her awareness expanded into the quantum field, Chen experienced a moment of transcendent clarity. The universe wasn't a collection of separate objects and forces, but a single interconnected pattern, exactly like Maya's drawings. Wei watched in awe as a shimmering field of blue-white energy expanded outward from Chen's motionless form. Objects within the field began to behave according to impossible physics, floating, phasing, transforming. "It's working," he whispered. Chen couldn't hear him. Her consciousness now existed partially outside normal spacetime. With her remaining connection to her physical body, she directed the quantum field to expand through the evacuation tunnels, rendering them undetectable to consortium sensors. Then, with her final coherent thought, she transmitted the revelation she had discovered at the threshold of death. The Prometheus device wasn't meant to be a weapon of destruction, but a tool of creation, the ability to reshape reality through collective human consciousness. As consortium forces breached the laboratory, Chen's body slumped in the chair, blood trickling from her eyes and ears. But her sacrifice had achieved its purpose. The evacuees, including Maya, escaped detection and scattered throughout humanity's hidden enclaves. Chen's final transmission arrived, the blueprint for a technology that could free Earth, if only they could find the resources to build it. 10 years passed like a slow healing wound. Maya Chen stood at the observation port of Sanctuary 7, one of humanity's last hidden strongholds built within the hollowed interior of a mountain in what was once northern Canada. At 20 years old, she had her mother's piercing eyes and analytical mind, though she kept her hair cropped short for practicality. The display before her showed a real-time satellite feed, pirated from one of the consortium's own monitoring stations. The Earth's surface had changed dramatically. Vast geometric structures now dominated former urban centers, while large portions of farmland had been converted to alien vegetation with iridescent purple foliage. "They're terraforming it," came a gruff voice behind her. Commander Wei had aged considerably, his once black hair now completely gray, his face a map of new scars and deeper wrinkles. Yet his eyes remained sharp as ever. "Not terraforming," Maya corrected, not turning from the display. "Adapting. They want Earth's basic biosphere intact, but modified to support their biochemistry alongside what remains of ours." We grunted. "You sound like your mother." A ghost of a smile touched Maya's lips. High praise. She turned as the sanctuary's central chamber hummed with activity. Representatives from the 12 remaining human enclaves had gathered for what might be their final council. Resources were dwindling. Safe havens were being discovered and destroyed with increasing frequency. Humanity needed a breakthrough, or extinction loomed within another decade. "The raid team is ready," Wei said, checking his tactical display. "But I still think you should stay behind." Maya shook her head. The Moon facility contains the only consortium research center studying human neural patterns. If anyone can interpret what they've learned, it's me. The plan was audacious to the point of madness. Use a salvaged and retrofitted consortium shuttle to infiltrate their lunar research facility, extract whatever data they could about the aliens' understanding of human consciousness, and return before the inevitable response crushed them. 16 hours later, Maya found herself moving through the sterile corridors of the lunar facility in a stolen consortium environmental suit. The team had penetrated the outer defenses using security codes extracted from a captured drone, but the inner sections remained challenging. 5 minutes until security protocols reset, warned Liu, their tech specialist, through the comm system. "Whatever you're looking for, make it quick." Maya accessed a terminal in what appeared to be the central research chamber. Strange containers lined the walls, each holding a floating human brain connected to a bewildering array of sensors. Her stomach twisted, but she forced herself to focus on the data. The consortium language had been partially decoded over the years, enough for her to navigate the information system. What she found made her blood run cold. They'd been experimenting on human prisoners, she reported to the team. "Trying to understand our neural patterns. But there's something else, something unexpected." As she delved deeper into the files, fragments of what appeared to be religious or mythological text appeared alongside clinical research data. "Wei, are you seeing this?" she whispered. "These aren't just scientific records. They're comparing human brain patterns to something called the aberrant intelligence from their religious texts." Wei's voice crackled through her comm. "Religious texts? The consortium has religion." "Not exactly," Maya replied, downloading everything she could. "More like a shared origin mythology. There's 7 species all evolved under the influence of something they call the architects, and there's a prophecy about an aberrant intelligence that will either destroy the universe or transform it." A facility-wide alarm suddenly blared, bathing the chamber in pulsing crimson light. "Time's up," Wei barked. "Get to extraction point now." As Maya fled through the corridors with the data secure, she passed a chamber she hadn't noticed before. Inside, a lone human sat in a chair similar to the Prometheus device. Her mother had sacrificed herself to operate. Consortium scientists surrounded the human, monitoring readings as the subject convulsed in obvious agony. They were trying to replicate her mother's work. Back aboard their stolen shuttle, as they narrowly escaped the lunar gravity well, Maya reviewed the stolen data. One phrase in the consortium record stood out, referring to human neural patterns, quantum harmonization potential. They're afraid of us, she realized aloud. Not because of what we are, but because of what we might become. Wei looked at her expectantly. My mother's work wasn't just a weapon or a shield. Maya continued, her mind racing with possibilities. It was the first step toward an evolutionary leap that the consortium has been taught to fear throughout their entire existence. We call it the gift. Maya explained to the assembled leaders of humanity's remaining enclaves. The holographic display in Sanctuary 7's council chamber showed a network of 12 interconnected devices, each bearing a resemblance to the original Prometheus prototype, but with significant modifications. Based on my mother's final transmission and the consortium data we recovered from the lunar facility, we've designed a distributed quantum resonance network. Each node amplifies and synchronizes human consciousness across vast distances. Elder Okafor, representative of the African underground cities, leaned forward. And what exactly will this network do when activated? Maya exchanged glances with Wei before answering. Honestly, we're not entirely certain. My mother's theory suggests it will create a quantum field that enhances our natural ability to affect probability at the quantum level. At minimum, it should disrupt consortium technology long enough to give us a fighting chance. At maximum, pressed Representative Garcia of the South American Alliance. At maximum, Maya replied quietly, it could trigger the evolutionary leap the consortium fears, a transformation of human consciousness itself. The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued it was too risky. Others insisted they had no choice, while a few questioned whether such a dramatic evolutionary step was even desirable. We silenced the room with a sharp whistle. The consortium has located 3 of our enclaves in the past month alone. At this rate, humanity has less than a year before extinction. We're out of options and out of time. The vote, when it came, was unanimous but grim. Operation Gift would proceed. The next 3 months saw humanity's remaining resources poured into the most ambitious projects since the Exodus underground. Engineering teams in each enclave worked around the clock, constructing quantum resonator nodes based on Maya's designs. Raid teams made increasingly daring sorties to the surface to gather rare materials and components. Maya worked herself to exhaustion, coordinating the technical aspects while dealing with the psychological implications. The gift required more than advanced technology. It needed human minds willing to connect to the network, despite the known risks of neural feedback. We have volunteers at every location, Wei reported during one late-night strategy session. More than we need, actually. Maya nodded, unsurprised. People want to contribute, to be part of something greater than themselves. Like your mother was, Wei added softly. Maya's eyes drifted to her old sketchbook, now tattered and worn, that sat on her workstation. The childish drawings of quantum patterns had evolved into precise technical diagrams as she had grown. The quantum resonators need to be placed at specific locations around the globe, she explained, changing the subject. The network forms a geometric pattern that maximizes field stability. Each site needs to be secured and held long enough for synchronization. Wei studied the marked locations on the global map. Each point represented a former human population center, now under firm consortium control. This won't be infiltration, he observed grimly. This will be warfare. Open combat against superior forces. Yes, Maya acknowledged. The largest coordinated military action in human history, and we'll need to launch all 12 operations simultaneously to prevent the consortium from shifting resources. As the preparations entered their final phase, humanity's surveillance network detected unusual activity in the outer solar system. Wei called an emergency meeting to share the disturbing news. A consortium fleet has entered the solar system, he announced, his expression grave. Much larger than anything we've seen before. Our analysts believe it's their Grand Armada. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. They know what we're planning. Wei nodded. Somehow, yes. Intelligence suggests this fleet has been used against other civilizations in the past. It's a planet killer, designed to sterilize worlds that can't be salvaged. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The consortium had decided humanity wasn't worth the continued effort of subjugation. They were moving to full extinction. How long do we have? Asked Elder Okafor. At their current velocity? We checked his data. 3 days before they reach optimal firing position. Maya stood, her decision made. Then we launch in 2. The resonator sites aren't fully prepared, but we don't have a choice. As the council dispersed to make final preparations, Maya returned to her quarters and opened her mother's last personal message, the one she had saved for this moment. Dr. Eliza Chen's face appeared, recorded hours before her death. Maya, if you're watching this, then humanity has reached its final crossroads. Remember that our greatest strength isn't our technology or even our resilience. It's our capacity to imagine a better world and then create it. The gift isn't a weapon. It's a doorway. Trust what you find on the other side. Maya closed the recording and prepared for war. The dawn of humanity's last stand broke with uncertainty across a wounded Earth. Maya stood at the command center of Sanctuary 7, monitoring the global operations through a network of salvaged and repurposed consortium communication relays. 12 teams, each led by their enclave's best fighters, had deployed to their designated resonator sites. The quantum devices, carefully disguised as supply crates and broken into modular components, accompanied them. Tokyo team in position, reported a communications officer. Sydney team delayed by heavy patrol activity, but moving forward. Wei entered, his battle armor bearing the scars of previous conflicts and hasty repairs. Despite his age, he had insisted on personally leading the assault on the Geneva location, a decision Maya hadn't opposed. Something felt right about completing her mother's work where it had begun. The Armada has accelerated, he informed her grimly. New estimate gives us 36 hours, not 48. Maya nodded, the weight of billions of lives, past and potential future, pressing down on her shoulders. We stick to the plan. All teams activate their resonators as soon as they're assembled, but full synchronization can only happen when all 12 are online. The first 24 hours unfolded like a desperate chess match across the globe. Human teams used every trick they had learned in a decade of resistance, timing movements between consortium sensor suites, using indigenous wildlife to create distractions, deploying electromagnetic pulse devices to temporarily blind defensive systems. In Moscow, the team infiltrated the consortium hub through maintenance tunnels beneath the former Kremlin. In Cairo, resistance fighters used a sandstorm as cover for their approach. In Rio, they came by sea, using primitive wooden boats that registered as driftwood on consortium scanners. Maya maintained communication with each team, guiding them through the complex process of assembling and activating their resonators. One by one, the devices came online, creating localized quantum fields that briefly disrupted consortium technology in their vicinity. 8 resonators active, the communications officer announced. Cairo team reports heavy casualties, but the device is functioning. Maya checked the countdown timer. 18 hours remaining before the Armada reached firing position. Then came the setbacks. London team is down, reported the comm officer, voice tight with emotion. Resonator destroyed. Before Maya could process this, another alert sounded. Delhi team surrounded. They've activated their resonator, but consortium forces are converging. They can't hold the position. Within the hour, 2 more teams had fallen. The Tokyo resonator was destroyed by a precision strike from orbit. The Sydney team managed to activate their device, but were immediately captured, the resonator remaining online but inaccessible for the crucial final synchronization. As the clock ticked down to 12 hours, only 7 resonators remained operational. The quantum field was fragmenting, unstable. "We need all 12, Maya whispered, desperation clouding her thoughts. The network won't achieve critical stability without all 12 nodes. Her chief engineer, Dr. Rivera, approached with an alternative. There might be a way. If we reconfigure the remaining resonators to boost their output and modify the geometric pattern, we could possibly achieve field stability with fewer nodes. How many would we need at minimum? Maya asked. 8 stable nodes, but the neural feedback would be substantially higher, possibly fatal to anyone connected. Maya made her decision. Reconfigure the network. I'll coordinate with the remaining teams. The final hours became a blur of desperate adjustments and heroic last stands. The New York team, cornered in the ruins of Grand Central Station, held off waves of consortium drones to keep their resonator online. The Sydney team, though captured, managed to sabotage their restraints and regain control of their device. With 6 hours remaining, Wei's team reached Geneva, the final and most crucial node location. The site of her mother's sacrifice was now a heavily fortified consortium research center built directly above the ruins of the old facility. Maya watched through Wei's helmet camera as his team fought their way through the complex, using a combination of salvaged consortium weapons and human ingenuity. When conventional tactics failed, they used the building's own ventilation system to spread a chemical agent that temporarily disabled the alien biosensors. "We've reached the central chamber," Wei reported, his breathing labored. "Setting up the resonator now." On Maya's display, the network diagram showed 8 functioning nodes. If Geneva came online and the reconfiguration worked, they might have a chance. Then disaster struck. A consortium heavy assault unit breached the chamber where Wei's team was working. In the ensuing firefight, the resonator was damaged and 3 of Wei's team killed. "Status report," Maya demanded, her voice cracking with tension. Wei's blood-streaked face appeared on the feed. "Resonator damaged but repairable. Need time." Behind him, the remaining team members fought desperately against overwhelming odds. One by one, they fell, buying Wei precious seconds to work. 4 hours to Armada firing position, announced the comm officer solemnly. As Wei completed the emergency repairs, a final wave of consortium forces surrounded him. The camera feed showed him standing alone, the resonator behind him, his weapon raised in defiance. "It's ready," he said simply. "But I can't activate it and hold them off simultaneously." Maya understood what he wasn't saying. "Commander," Wei smiled sadly. "Your mother would be proud of you, Maya. I'll see you on the other side." The feed shook violently as Wei threw himself at the advancing forces, drawing them away from the resonator. "Maya," he called through bursts of weapon fire, "get to the activation chamber." Tears streaming down her face, Maya grabbed her technical kit and raced for the nearest transport. There was only one way to complete the network now. She had to reach Geneva herself. The stolen consortium shuttle screamed through the atmosphere, its hull glowing cherry red from the friction. Maya had plotted a trajectory that mimicked the erratic flight pattern of damaged consortium maintenance drones, the only profile that might avoid immediate destruction from orbital defenses. 2 hours until Armada firing position, came the voice of Dr. Rivera through her earpiece, barely audible through the atmospheric interference. Maya gripped the controls tighter. Below her, the ruins of Geneva came into view, once a jewel of human civilization, now a geometric sprawl of alien architecture. The research center stood at its heart, a massive hexagonal structure gleaming with an unnatural blue luminescence. She guided the shuttle into a controlled crash 2 kilometers from her target, using a dense forest as cover. The impact rattled her bones, but the crash harness held. Gathering her equipment and a small arsenal salvaged from Wei's fallen team, she moved toward the facility on foot. The comlink crackled to life once more. Maya, Rivera's voice strained with urgency. "The network configuration is deteriorating. 3 more resonators have gone offline. We've recalculated. Even with the Geneva node, we won't achieve field stability." Maya paused in the shadow of a twisted metal sculpture that had once been the Jet Duo. "What about increasing power to the remaining nodes? Already at maximum. The only option would be to create a focal point, channel all the network's energy through a single node. But the neural feedback would be fatal." "Yes, I know." Maya cut him off. "Reconfigure for focal channeling through Geneva. I'll handle the rest." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Rivera finally responded, his voice heavy. "Understood. May whatever gods remain wash over you." As Maya infiltrated the facility's outer perimeter, the sky above began to change. The Armada's massive ships were now visible to the naked eye. Vast, cathedral-like structures descending into optimal position. Their weapon systems charged, filling the heavens with an ethereal green glow that cast sickly shadows across the landscape. Using Wei's security codes and her knowledge of consortium protocols, Maya navigated through the facility's labyrinthine corridors. The aliens were in disarray, most having been deployed to defend against Wei's frontal assault. Few expected a lone human to penetrate their inner sanctum. When she finally reached the central chamber, she found it eerily quiet. Wei's body lay where he had fallen, surrounded by the alien forces he had taken with him. The resonator stood intact beside a familiar sight, a chair reminiscent of her mother's original Prometheus device. Working quickly, Maya connected her portable interface to the resonator and initiated the final calibration sequence. The remaining nodes around the world would channel their energy here, through her. "All remaining nodes locked in," Rivera confirmed. 30 minutes to Armada firing position. Overhead, a massive view screen activated automatically, showing the Armada's weapon systems locking onto multiple targets across the planet's surface. The aliens were taking no chances. They would strike every known and suspected human enclave simultaneously. Maya settled into the chair and attached the neural interface components. Unlike her mother's crude prototype, this version distributed the connection across her entire neural network. It wouldn't prevent the fatal feedback, but it would give her longer to complete the task. "Network ready for activation," Rivera reported. "Maya, it's been an honor." She allowed herself a small smile. "Give my regards to the others. And if this works, if we survive, remember what my mother said. The gift isn't a weapon. It's a doorway." With steady fingers, Maya activated the sequence. Pain exploded through her consciousness as the quantum field began to form around her. The Prometheus device hummed with increasing intensity as it channeled the energy from the 7 remaining nodes across the planet. Through the agony, Maya focused on a single thought: not destruction, but creation. Not separation, but unity. She pictured humanity not as they were now, broken, scattered, desperate, but as they could be, connected, evolved, transcendent. The quantum field expanded rapidly, washing over the facility in waves of blue-white energy. Where it passed, reality itself seemed to soften. Objects moved without force. Light bent in impossible ways. Time stuttered and flowed erratically. On the view screen, Maya watched through tear-filled eyes as the Armada fired its weapons, massive energy beams lancing toward Earth's surface. But where they met the expanding quantum field, they simply dissolved, their energy absorbed and transformed. The field continued to grow, accelerating exponentially as it escaped the confines of conventional physics. It swept across continents, oceans, atmosphere, reaching the Armada itself within minutes. As neural feedback began to shut down her body's systems, Maya experienced a final moment of perfect clarity. She wasn't dying, she was changing. And she wasn't alone. Every human mind on Earth connected through the quantum network in a moment of unprecedented unity. The collective consciousness of humanity, with all its creativity, resilience, and imagination, flowed through the gift like a tidal wave of potential. The consortium ships hung motionless in space, their weapons silenced, their very structure altered by contact with the field. Inside, alien minds experienced something entirely new: the chaotic beauty of human emotion, the dizzying freedom of human imagination. For species that had evolved along purely logical paths for millions of years, the exposure was transformative. The rigid boundaries of their consciousness, constrained by evolutionary determinism, suddenly expanded into realms they had never conceived possible. In that moment of convergence, understanding flowed in both directions. Humans glimpsed the vast knowledge and cosmic perspective of the consortium races. The aliens experienced the boundless creativity and emotional depth of humanity. The prophecy was fulfilled, but not as the consortium had feared. The universe wasn't destroyed but reborn, not through destruction but through connection. As consciousness returned, aid to normal parameters, the unified field gently dissipated. But something fundamental had changed. The neural architecture of both humans and consortium species had been permanently altered by the encounter, creating pathways for understanding that transcended conventional communication. Maya opened her eyes to find herself still alive, though forever changed. The neural interface had burned itself out rather than killing her, another impossibility made possible. Through the view screen, she watched as consortium ships began peaceful descents to Earth's surface. Not as conquerors, but as equals seeking dialogue. The weapon that shouldn't exist had never been a weapon at all. It was a gift: humanity's capacity to imagine beyond the possible and the will to make those dreams reality. And now, that gift belonged to the stars.